Hello, my dear viewers. I'm Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of personality. Today we will talk about one of the most mysterious mechanisms projection, but from a rather interesting perspective. The video is titled, "If I Feel Bad, Then It's Your Fault." I have prepared 4 real-life cases for you. We will look at them now and then, draw a general conclusion so that you don't just listen to abstract theory, but can actually visualize it. If you have the opportunity, I suggest you write this down, so you have it in front of you when we analyze together. Let's imagine a girl, a woman, who doesn't have a man in her life and, as they say, is actively searching. Her friend invites her to a cafe or a restaurant. They go there and spend time together, but nothing brings her joy. She starts looking for a reason to explain to herself why she feels so bad there. She ends up finding fault with the entire restaurant, the menu, the waiters, even her friend. Nothing is the way she would like it to be. But in reality, the true reason for her dissatisfaction is that there wasn't a single man in that restaurant or cafe whom she could impress, who would look at her with admiration. This is her main need. If there is no admiration, nothing brings her joy. This need for admiration is, in a way, hidden even from herself. So if we were to ask her whether she would like to receive admiring glances, she would of course say, yes, I do. But she cannot connect her bad mood to the absence of admiring looks, because in some way that would mean admitting her own dependence and sense of inadequacy. I am so dependent on admiration. For her, this is not very pleasant information, so she does not connect it to her bad mood. In fact, the girl is attacking herself from within, driven by her own need for admiration. In other words, she experiences self-aggressive attacks. But since she does not associate these processes with her inner world, it seems to her that everything outside is attacking her. In other words, she feels bad about something, she feels uncomfortable for some reason. She has the impression that something is attacking her. And in fact, that's true, but it is she who is attacking herself from within. Make a brief note of this. And now, second example. Let's imagine a man working in an office. His boss calls him in and says, "You are working as a department head." The director calls him in. The man works as a department head. We see that you are not coping well. You are having trouble connecting with your employees. You forget many things, and therefore we are demoting you to a lower position. We will appoint someone else to your current role. Of course, this is unpleasant, and the man begins to attack himself. He attacks himself with his survival instinct because he has put himself in an unsafe situation. There is a threat to his quality of life, a threat of losing his managerial position. And in this state of self-aggression, he can only reduce the intensity of his attacks on himself by starting to blame his boss, claiming that all the arguments are untrue, that none of it is real. In other words, the only way for him to stop tormenting himself internally is to direct his aggression toward his boss. But he cannot allow himself to express aggression, because if he does, he will be seen as a bad person. He chooses to suffer. This is like the girl from the cafe in our first example. She also won't admit it if you tell her she's angry about something. She will say no. The only thing she can acknowledge is that she's suffering, because the cafe isn't the way she would like it to be. A third example, let's imagine someone who provides consultations to others. For instance, you might picture a doctor or a psychologist, and this professional tries to be good during consultations in order to earn money and not lose clients. And of course, in a way, he's forcing himself. He compels himself to be someone he doesn't truly want to be. And this self-aggression, this forcing himself to act a certain way he does not associate with himself. He feels as though it is the clients who are forcing him to be so good, as if he's doing it for them, as if they are the reason. And if you were to ask him, do your clients irritate you? He would say, no, I suffer because they are ungrateful. I suffer because they are not smart enough. I suffer because they are not diligent enough. They don't do what I tell them. This person from the third example, our specialist, also does not acknowledge his own aggression. He suffers, and someone else is always to blame. And now the fourth promised example about a spouse. You can choose anyone, husband or wife. Let's imagine that the other spouse begins to grow and develop. He climbs the career ladder, his income increases, he reads books, raises his level of intelligence, and evolves. But our first spouse does none of this. He remains at the same level. He starts to feel envious of his spouse. He senses that he's inferior, and he cannot understand that he too is being attacked from within. In other words, his instinct for self-preservation tells him that he might be left behind. Because he is becoming uninteresting, he is turning into a kind of burden. And even if the second spouse does not think this way, the person, through these self-attacks, will project these thoughts onto their partner. And tension will begin to grow between them. Because of this tension, the second spouse may actually start to think, should I leave? So here we have 4 people from these examples. 4 people who are suffering. 4 people who do not acknowledge their anger. Because if you were to tell them, you are angry right now, angry that the first woman does not have any admiring men, you are angry because you lost that position, because you feel you're not measuring up. You are angry at your clients. You're not getting the clients you would like to have. You are angry at your spouse because now you have to reach out to her, or at your husband because you have to reach out to him. All these people will deny it because anger would immediately compromise them. When a person is suffering and is a victim, they are seen as good. But when they become angry, they turn into the aggressor, and they lose the right to make claims and to feel completely innocent, good, and tormented. It is especially difficult to be around people like this. Those who do not acknowledge their own aggression, those who appoint themselves as martyrs. Each of us does this. These are not just some other people, we do this too. We either act out our aggression, in other words, it seems like there are 2 options in this situation, to direct aggression at someone else or to become a martyr. Becoming a martyr is a double deception. When a person acts out aggression, at least that is only a single deception. Why is it a deception? Look. Here is a diagram of a person's inner world. We have our real self and our ideal self here. The ideal self is an instinct for self-preservation. This is when I behave in a way that does not pose a threat to myself. That is, if something doesn't go my way, I will instantly attack myself with the instinct of self-preservation. I will inflict pain on myself. This is what we call autoaggression. In this dynamic, there is no analysis because it is the instinct of self-preservation. It is quite primitive. There is only one message here: you are bad, you are bad. So here, there is both a demand and a punishment for not meeting expectations. A person who neither acknowledges their own aggression nor understands their inner world will not feel this impact on themselves. Here, this attacking part, our ideal, the instinct of self-preservation, I have drawn it as a path. He does not recognize it. And it seems to him that it is the outside world attacking him. It attacks by withholding what is desired. In other words, the tormentor is not this internal part, but someone external. In the cafe, our tormentors are the people, the waiters, the cafe itself. In the example with the man in the office, the tormentor is the boss. In the example with the consultant, it is the client. In the example with the spouse, it is the other spouse. So They are seen as the indirect cause of my suffering, but all of my complaints are directed at them. Here is a subtle point. Why are the complaints directed at them? Because the complaint could also be directed at myself, and then I attack my self-aggression. I'm bad, 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 or I'm a bad person. I drive myself into depression. I completely shut down. If I attack them, then I am aggressive, I am inappropriate, and I'm aware of this. But if I am suffering, then the other person is the bad one. They are responsible, but there is nothing wrong with me. This is a double deception. How can one get out of this trap? Well, first of all, you need to understand this mechanism. Secondly, you need to realize that such a person has no ability to analyze or change. They cannot analyze what is happening. They can only make accusations. In other words, the entire analysis boils down to you are bad, you are bad, you are bad, or someone else is bad, 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 bad. There is no understanding. For example, a woman who is preoccupied with finding a man does not realize how she is directing aggression at herself, how intense her hunger is, or how obsessive this idea has become. I am certain that this kind of hunger will interfere with her communication, because a man will feel as if she wants to swallow him whole and completely entangle him in her web. In the same way, if a man were to listen to his boss and not interpret his words as you're bad, which is how we instinctively hear things when we desire approval, but instead listen separately to what the other person is actually saying, he would be able to recognize his problem areas, address them, and advance in his career. If a psychologist realized that as a consultant, he is manipulating his clients, trying to keep them with him, and that it is he himself who is forcing himself to be good, not someone else imposing it on him, he would be able to improve his professional level and retain clients through his professionalism rather than by manipulating them with his goodness. A spouse could understand that personal growth is necessary and that it would benefit him as well. But these people, well, not these specific people from the examples, let's put it that way. When we fall into this trap, we are unable to analyze the situation. We can't calmly look at our problem areas, at our shortcomings, so to speak, because we immediately start attacking ourselves. Your body, in other words, we are essentially beating ourselves up psychologically rather than analyzing, rather than truly reflecting. And until we understand this mechanism within ourselves, until we can distinguish between self-criticism, making accusations, and actually analyzing the causes and being able to listen. For example, take the case of this person and his boss. The boss helped him. He pointed out what was wrong. But even when we ask someone to tell us something, it hurts us so much, we attack ourselves so harshly that we can't really hear what's being said. We only hear, you're bad, you're bad. And we analyze ourselves in exactly the same way. In other words, real change becomes impossible. The only thing I can do to reduce this inner tension is to shift the blame, as they say, onto someone else. And if I shift the blame as someone who is suffering, as someone in the role of a victim, then I remain the same. I stay with my compassion. And nothing in my life changes. I simply learn to endure. My life will stay exactly the same. If I want to learn how to analyze, how to develop this skill, all my videos are about this. There are courses, there are videos. So even just by watching the videos, there will already be progress, a growing ability to analyze and understand yourself. Because when we fall into suffering or into anger at ourselves or at someone else, we get caught in an emotional whirlwind that will happen. But if you remember this information, you can find your way out of it. So our task is to recognize aggressive or self-aggressive attacks and to learn to analyze rather than punish or make accusations. This process should start with other people. Internally, it's less noticeable, but in relationships with others, it's much easier to understand. When our speech can be reduced to, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. A person may seem to be saying different things, but in reality, they are just repeating this one phrase. And this is the victim's house, this moaning, I am a martyr, others are tormenting me. As I mentioned, this is deception within deception. Because if at least the aggression were visible, the person would realize their own needs, would understand just how selfishly they want to force the world to act according to their wishes. And this sense of entitlement is directed entirely at the world. I can't understand or sort this out myself because I am like this, and that's why I say, and that's why I hope that a man will appear who will look at you, at me. As a department head, I can't change because I immediately attack and criticize myself. And so my only hope is that my supervisor won't notice and I'll somehow manage to get by here. Or when I am a psychologist, I will hope that the clients who come to me will stay even despite my lack of professionalism, and that they will come to me to feel good about themselves. Or when I am a spouse, I will hope that my partner will become less intelligent, or that my husband or wife will start drinking, so that I can finally stop feeling inadequate next to them. You see, this is a childlike request for the world to change. Try to find such a situation yourself and describe it in the comments or in your own journals. Share your insights in the comments. I read all the comments. I don't have time to respond to everyone, but I do read them all. And as always, see you next time.